Cool. Welcome all to another installment of Crosslink FeatureNet workshops. Woohoo! We keep having the numbering issues, like workshop number 5, software release number 10, etc. So I'm just going to start calling them by their dates, the workshops. So this is the August 26th workshop. And I'm hoping to do a super quick intro and then just hand it off. So just in case you haven't heard this, Crosslink is our effort at Shielded Labs to improve Zcash safety, decentralization, and economics with a design that would change Zcash to a hybrid proof-of-work, proof-of-stake consensus mechanism. And if that's new to you or you have thoughts or interests, you can always ping me or others after the workshop. Okay, so right now we are, we have this FeatureNet that's been running, and so I'm gonna briefly describe what's happened since the last time we've met, and then what we're planning on doing in the future, but then hand it off. So just super briefly, some highlights of since the past workshop are that we have released a user-activated slashing feature. That's the new name we want to settle on. We were calling it a user hard forking feature, but there are many kinds of hard forks, and this just does a specific thing. So the punchline of that is that users successfully used that and were able to unbrick BFT by slashing unresponsive finalizers, which is cool that it actually worked on the first try. And users demonstrated that they could do it. So pretty good for a MVP of a new feature. Then we ran into a bunch of resiliency or robustness issues around new networking code and several other things. And then and that ran us into the shoals or the rocky ground of like the upstream permanent forking issue. So we had some fun interacting with upstream about that. And then we also noticed more and more people wanting more and more support for the headless use case. So we've made some of those improvements. So that's like my quick summary, but other people are going to go into more detail. And then moving forward after this workshop, the next big exciting things, which we'll talk more about later, are we're going to reset the network in order to roll out new consensus changes, including things like incorporating Ironwood, but also improvements to the actual Crosslink protocol stuff. And then we're also planning to launch something we call a nightly network, which I'll describe more later. But if this network isn't exciting enough for you, the nightly network will be even more exciting. So I think that's the quick intro. And so the next, we're going to have Philip give a quick tour of what's new in the GUI. Yeah.
Hey everybody, I'm Philip. I'm on the Crosslink team. As you know, this is our visualizer for the Zcash Crosslink node. We've made quite a few improvements since the last workshop. We now have a follow tip feature, which is quite nice. It's been ported over from the first visualizer. It just keeps the camera pointed at the proof of work chain as it's syncing. I'm still syncing here, as you can see. So you can watch it smoothly progress. We introduced several features that were present in the old visualizer. And I'll talk about that in a second. You can also see, if you're wondering what these gray blocks are on the side, they are part of our new feature that Andrew worked on to introduce basically chain visualization for like blocks that are not yet on your chain, on your local node. These are actually blocks that are being attested to by peers in the networking system and the new networking sync that we've written. And so we're just visualizing the chain that has not yet been downloaded. You can see it's as BFT is advancing and everything, we are downloading the new blocks and we're able to, they slide into view basically. If there are more than one chains that are live competing at a time, like if there are side chains, if there are forks, then this will visualize those forks. It just so happens that right now we don't have any forks right now, so this main chain is just sliding into view. Among the other changes that we introduced from the old visualizer, we do have some like fading of unrelated blocks when you hover over. So this was, a long-standing thing that we were ported over from our. If you recall, if you're an old head, you recall the previous workshops. There were some these kinds of features. We also show signatures for the finalizers on the most recent BFT decision. It's like the proof of stake tip. You just a bunch of signatures and show you who was active on these BFT decisions. We also have a copy block hex in the block inspector. We made a couple improvements in the block inspector. You can also just copy the block data. Yeah, so as you may know, the FeatureNet experienced a BFT stall after there was an absentee finalizer for a while. And so on like BFT block, I think it was like 2,157, we the BFT stalled for a couple weeks, and that was the time during which we developed the user activated slash fork feature or slash feature. And so we allowed users to configure their node to specify, among other things, a proof of work block height, as well as a finalizer or a set of finalizers they would like to slash. The users coordinated to activate the proof of work hard fork at block height, proof of work block height 225,000. So I can use the jump to height feature to go there. And you can see that on my node, which is configured to this fork, this slash, there is an orange circle that just indicates that this is where the slashing activates on proof of work. But of course, this is not just a proof of work system. This is a hybrid proof of work, proof of stake system. And there is also, if I jump to, I believe it's 19183, 19138, you can see that on the BFT side of things, there is also an orange circle indicating that this BFT decision, after which the BFT stalled for several weeks, is where the slashing activated on the proof of stake side. So this happened significantly earlier than the proof of work activation, because as soon as users configured their nodes to be on a fork, slash fork, then BFT slashing activated. And actually, the BFT resumed quite quickly after users started activating this slashing fork. So it was quite a successful feature. It went off without a hitch, essentially, and then a few days or weeks later, we arrived at block 225,000 on the proof of work side, and that's when the bonds delegated to the absentee finalizer were officially slashed, and then BFT, eventually also finalized that activation. So things went off without a hitch is the bottom line. So that's the main coverage of the slashing feature. There are also some other improvements that we made. For example, for headless users, for one, we removed some build dependencies for the headless users, so we were able to allow the audio features to be active without users needing to install, strange audio dependencies, which just makes the build experience easier for people who are building the headless wallet. We also have some RPC improvements for headless CLI users. There are wallet staking actions and wallet staking positions RPCs. There's a like primary UFVK RPC, and the UFVK is in some of the scanner results. So you can see here on I'm still running the node, but you can see I have a shell open, and I'm just going to do I'll zoom in a little bit. Here is just a curl command to just issue an RPC for the wallet staking positions RPC. And you should see that I get a list of, sorry, scroll wheel, 1 second. You can see that I just have a list of a bunch of staking positions that my wallet has. So that should help wallet users, headless wallet users, a little bit better. There were several other improvements that we worked on, and I'd like to hand it off over to Sam for discussion about the forking situation that we experienced after BFT resumed.
Yes, thank you, Philip. So the forking situation was quite interesting. We've had a long history of these, even starting when we tried to initially launch the network. And then we had that, if people recall, we had an issue there that we had to rapidly fix and then relaunch. This time, most of the proof of work forking issues have been solved, to my knowledge. I mean, obviously, we'll see. The problems were not actually. We had done previously a round of work on the networking layer to enable higher bandwidth usage. And then the issues this time were, part of it was some naive code on our part, but basically improving the speed of making sure that everything is quick and able to respond to block events, because there was a cascading slowness issue due to some pathological code that we had to clean up. Also, we restructured the syncing because we are hybrid proof of work, proof of stake. There are some cyclical dependencies, and so we had a rewrite of some of the code. Not cyclical dependencies, but the two chains depend on each other, which means that the Zebra proof of work system has to deal with situations where proof of work blocks are not invalid. They are just not currently able to be proven as valid. And so both proof of stake and proof of work had this ambiguous state. And so old logic that assumes, well, it's either totally valid and I should accept it right now, or it's invalid, doesn't fit well with this model and has to be updated. Once something is valid, it cannot become invalid. So there's a one-way latch there, but there is this third state of indeterminate in the middle. So there was some code simplification there. Then we also had the wallet sync was slow. So we had a very strong debug validation that we had to turn off. That was actually the main reason for slowness. Wallet persistence will probably show up later, but why make it persistent when you can make it fast for now? There's a good opportunity to speed things up. Yes, I would say we've also done some on the BFT side. We had some improvements to covering edge cases that are not present in. So many of the proofs in the Tendermint paper, they don't handle cases that are not important to the security proof, and they solve certain things with write-ahead logs, where nodes are never supposed to forget what votes they cast. We like handling that situation because in development, at least for us, it actually does happen quite frequently that we just delete data or reset some node, and then it's good for that to not, as best as it can, resolve this situation that isn't supposed to happen in production, but it can happen. So we had some stability improvements there. Now I'd like to send it back to Nate for the notes.
All right. Yeah, thanks for the overview. So that's sort of like a quick tour of what has happened to get us here today. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what's coming up leading up to the next workshop. And then Jason's going to talk about what we've seen some community members doing, and then we'll probably open the floor for like questions and feedback and conversation. And that's going to be it. So moving on, upcoming, we are aiming for the next workshop to be around the end of September. And the big ticket item focuses, or the central focus is launching a new network. So this will be resetting the feature net and deploying a new version with updated consensus code. So the current network has been running for a while, and we know there's consensus changes we want to make, and the real world mainnet way to do that is requires careful like synchronization and activation logic, and we don't have that yet. And so what we've done instead is just we've been tracking a list of consensus changes we want to make or need to make, and then we'll just wrap up the current network. We'll have clarity about a cutoff height that will be used for the rewards calculations. So this is approaching the end of September, so you'll want to stay tuned for that. And then you can join the new network, and then the rewards calculations will continue on that new network. We're not planning on saving state on the network ledger, so the new network will sort of begin from scratch, from Genesis, and it will have new backwards incompatible consensus features. And so we have a list, and we're still deciding how much of those we want to bundle together into one bigger update versus just biting off a more bite-sized portion, doing a network reset, and then doing future network resets. But generally, we just want people to recognize or expect that we are likely to be doing more network resets on our path towards getting production ready. And so some of the consensus changes that are probably the highest priority or interest are, one is we're just going to pull in the ironwood stuff and make sure we're up to date on all of that moving forward. And we might be pulling in other changes from upstream. And then we have Crosslink specific stuff. So there's basically a few categories. One is staking improvements, and I feel like a big ticket item there for users is adding finalizer commission fees. So these are where if you're running a finalizer, but you're not otherwise staking, there's a distinct kind of thing where you are receiving a commission for the effort of running the finalizer, and it's proportional to how much stake is pointed at your finalizer to align incentives, but it's a little bit distinct. So we'll be implementing those, and then we're going to be tweaking and massaging and improving the other aspects of the staking system. And some of it is like security relevant and so forth. In terms of usability, I'm not sure any of the changes we've discussed will directly impact usability, except one is we might change the timing of when you are able to receive and spend rewards because we need to make sure that corresponds to when rewards are final in order to ensure like the security assumptions all fit together correctly. And then there's going to be like, formatting and cryptography improvements. And yeah, we'll say more depending on how much of that list we get to. And then there's going to be some improvements to the user activated slashing feature. Very likely. Yeah, so I think that's like the high level of the consensus changes we want to make. And on the path there, so up until the end of September, we're going to continue using this network and tracking the ledger in terms of automated rewards calculations. But we're going to begin 2 lines of development on the software because we're going to have a new more rapid development branch that's rolling out the consensus changes. And we want to be also testing that. So soon now we want to launch something called the nightly network. The idea here is we will be making rapid changes to the software. They might be backwards incompatible. This network might reset a lot. It will, it's more likely to have bugs, so on and so forth. And it won't have any automated rewards calculations. So the automated rewards will just stay on the feature network. And so this is the first transition where we're starting to get into a development process that is aiming for production readiness, where there's a staging, like the main Zcash test network, and then there's the main net. We want to get to that level eventually, and this is the beginning. So you are welcome to show up and join that network, and we'll be sharing info as soon as we get that together, maybe in the next week or 2. And you should expect it to be buggy and unstable, and it's only if you're interested and like that kind of stuff. If on the other hand, you just want to try out Crosslink, see what the features are, how it works, and maybe test your own infrastructure against a more stable thing, then that's it. And you want the rewards, you want to like participate, that's still the feature net. Let's see, is there anything else? Oh, whoops. Yeah, so I mentioned some details about rewards. Is there anything else you wanted to say, Jason, about like rewards?
Yeah, I can give a quick walkthrough. So towards the end of September, we're going to announce a payout block height and a specific cutoff date and a time for submissions. So similar to last round, anyone staking from a desktop or mobile wallet will need to send me the UFDK for each wallet that they used. You'll also need to provide a mainnet Ironwood address for payment. We will allow about a week for submissions, and then run the scanner, run the submitted UFDKs through a scanning tool to calculate each participant's payout. Any rewards that remain unclaimed because, for example, a participant didn't submit a UFDK by the deadline will be reallocated as discretionary rewards for community members who made high quality contributions. So identical to the process we ran last time, and we'll announce the dates at some point mid to late September. Any questions there? Okay, so I wanted to give a few shout outs. We've been really lucky to have such an engaged group of testers around Crosslink. People have been going above and beyond running finalizers and staking by reporting bugs and other issues that come up, building tools, contributing fixes, and we really appreciate the time and effort that everyone has put in. So a few people we wanted to recognize, Florian, Ironwood Guardian, SSH, we're all super active in reporting bugs, crashes, mining behavior, and other network issues. Jackson Rhodes made contributions through debugging, diagnosing forks and network stalls, identifying memory and wallet issues, and testing fixes to improve mining and node reliability. Scander contributed fixes around mining and Tenderlake reliability. Also super cool, he got a high-powered miner running on a test net, which was great to see. Awesome chaos, which we like. Dismad built a Crosslink Explorer and a separate set of CLI utilities. Tom Z identified a critical miner bug that caused a chain to halt, and then he wrote a patch for it. USC MIG identified wallet and RPC issues and also tested Crosslink through Zingo CLI. Lowo recently joined and tested Crosslink with Nosy Wallet, which we're excited about. Dara Emma identified that part of the difficulty and stability was due to an existing Zebra issue, and Z helped distinguish that from the actual consensus level issues that were occurring. And also a thank you to Dre for taking notes during this workshop. Just want to say that you all are awesome. Thank you, and thanks again to everyone who has participated in the testnet. You know, whether I mention your name or not, you know, we appreciate your efforts in helping us make Crosslink better. So thank you. And with that, I think we can open it up to Q&A. We're happy to take questions or hear feedback or discuss really anything that people have been seeing on the testnet or anything related to Crosslink that's been on your mind. Let us know. For those who are newbies and want to get involved, feel free to send me a DM on Twitter or on the forum, and I'll add you to a Signal group where we do all our coordination. I'm a quiet investor on both the forum and Twitter.
Right. And one reason I was asking is we're trying to distinguish between, like for the workshops, should we be focusing on an audience that has been, you know, participating and tracking, and so here's what's new and where we're headed, or should we be doing more like user guides, workshops? Here's an overview of Crosslink. Here's how you do all the things. Or do we need two different kinds of workshops, et cetera? So if anyone notices wanting one or the other, let us know. If you're a newbie and you want a guided tour kind of meeting, so like we had a GUI screen share earlier, we can do that kind of thing. It's more methodical and is also explaining Crosslink concepts. If you're interested in that, let us know so that we can plan it.
We've got a question. I'll read it out here. Once Crosslink is live, what new things become possible for Zcash developers and applications that are difficult or impossible to build safely on Zcash today because of proof of work probabilistic finality?
Great question. So let's see. I think one thing that can often happen for more financially specific kinds of things, such as the current cross-chain bridging, is that there is a risk of financial harm if there's a proof of work rollback. And what happens is bridge operators or market makers or others take on a financial risk to make things happen quickly. And then it works out and they can make a cut if there's no rollback. But if there is a rollback, it could cause harm. So the interesting thing about the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's a little bit transparent or not visible to users. Like everything just seems like it works well. But the reason it concerns me is that means there's like hidden risk in the infrastructure. So like if there were a big rollback, maybe some of the bridges could no longer operate or would lose liquidity or something like that. And it's kind of hard to predict when that will happen. So that's kind of a more subtle case. In terms of, I'm trying to think of more user-facing details that can be built off of finality. I mean, it really sort of affects all economic decisions. Like if there is finality, and you're building anything that is going to be receiving a payment, or if anything that's receiving a payment, then that gives you a very clear, safe signal about when you can react on that payment with almost zero risk of loss. Yeah, trying to think of so it's like every application, kind of, in a way, every application where you're receiving ZEC is improved. As a developer or a system engineer or designer, you can make a lot of simplifying assumptions based on that, so that the kinds of apps may not change that much, but the design or the implementation or the usability can be greatly simplified. So one hope is that means more apps can roll out because there's less of a financial risk to whoever is operating or participating in the financial side of an application, and whoever is implementing the tech side has a simpler problem if they are going to rely on finality. Yeah, that's how I would think of it.
Breezy, did you have a question? You have the mic.
Yeah, I did. I was basically curious. I mean, the Crosslink, stops finalizing rather than risk sort of unsafe consensus. And I mean, it's already done that. You've talked about it a little bit, but on mainnet, exchanges, bridges, etc., will build on that. What is it like? What's the intended, or like what's the optimal process? If finality stalls.
Okay, sometimes on this platform, I feel like some people don't hear some other participants, so sorry about that. But I think I heard most of the question. Let me rephrase it. So it was, in the case that BFT stalls on mainnet, what will happen, or what should people expect, or what could people do? Was that the question?
Yeah, it's like, what's the governance path? I mean, just in terms of like, what are you thinking would be like the optimal path, or is it designed for that to be impossible?
So that's definitely not impossible. And the reason is basically, it's like this technical trade-off, but there's sort of a philosophical component to it, or a preference component. Some people prefer one thing, some people prefer a different thing. The trade-off is that the reason BFT halts is because there's no way, in the most hypothetical perfect design, there's no way to ensure, like for each of the participants, to ensure that every other participant sees the same thing and it's final, and it's progress from the previous final thing. And the halt occurs when participants become aware of that. And an important part of the safety is that everyone knows everyone is aware of that at the same time. And if there's progress on finality, there's a new block is made final, all of the participants know that, most of the participants know that, and any newcomers who are synced enough will also know that, which is pretty different from proof of work. So sorry, I'm getting a little bit off on a tangent. So the BFT stalling, it's not like you have a car engine driving and the car just broke down and you can't drive anymore. It's more like you are walking into an elevator and the elevator flashes a red light that's like, this elevator, the emergency brakes are locked on and this elevator refuses to move because it would be dangerous to do so. And so, all that being said, it's nice to always avoid that if possible. And there's a way to anticipate that coming, because we can see, if we're observing the network, we can see how much, like how many finalizers are online, they're responding, they're participating in the protocol. And there's a threshold. There has to be at least 2/3 of the stake weight participating. And if finalizers start becoming unresponsive and that threshold of active participating stake weight is like falling towards 2/3, then that's a sign that the emergency brakes are going to turn on soon unless somebody fixes something. So there's sort of layers. A BFT stall is like the safety brakes, but we can tell when the network is approaching that condition, and so there's opportunities for interventions. Those interventions could be like somebody knows the finalizers that are unresponsive and they call them and they're like, what's going on? Hey, did you realize there's that style? There's this other style where if finalizers are just unresponsive and enough users use this user activated soft fork feature, they can slash the stake delegated to that finalizer. And so that's kind of like also a big hammer, and it's hard to coordinate. It could be useful for emergencies, and that's the thing we tested on our feature net. But because it is possible and feasible, that should mean anyone who's staking, who is paying attention and doesn't want to have their funds slashed, should notice if it's delegated to a bad finalizer and delegated away. And I think there's our sort of approach or attitude is that those kinds of interventions are likely, we're going to be learning more about them and they're going to be evolving. And so one thing that we're doing that's a little bit different from a lot of BFT protocol designs is keeping it simpler and relying more on the participants to be figuring out those kinds of interventions. And then as we learn from that, maybe we can change the protocol to support things better. But what we're not doing is trying to predict a different kind of conditions that might be common and then trying to make the protocol automatically adjust, which makes it more complicated. And also it might fail if we're making the wrong predictions or different scenarios might come up. Does that did I answer the question?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. Zero Darts asks, is there a timeline for when Crosslink would be mainnet ready? Q2 2027, like on the website. So that Q2 2027 is sort of our best guess of when we think we'll have a production ready version of Crosslink available. That timeline might change, and I think we'll have a better idea by the end of the year, and we can provide an updated timeline if we need to, sort of extend things a bit. I do want to say that by Q2 2027 we're saying that we could have a production ready version. But that's not to say that it would be deployed to mainnet at that point in time, because there's still the current network upgrade pipeline. There's a lot that's in development, like Tachyon, Post Quantum, and other efforts. And there's also the governance process that Crosslink needs to go through to make sure that there's consensus for it to be deployed onto mainnet. So right now, again, just to sum up, like Q2 2027 is when we think we'll have a production-ready version, but we may extend that timeline, and we'll let people know by the end of this year. Okay, next question is, any estimate of upper bounds of finalizer set? Maybe you want to take that one?
Yes, I can take that. So the design that we've used for Crosslink is to select a BFT style proof of stake system, and there's like one sort of design trade-off between like on one end you have designs like Cosmos, which is similar to the kind of BFT we are using, and it prioritizes keeping the BFT protocol efficient and safe and relatively simple at the cost of overhead with the number of participants. And so there's sort of this inherent limitation on how many finalizers there can be with that kind of protocol. And everyone is curious about pushing that. And we are also, we have not been aiming to increase that cap specifically. Like if we were going to prioritize that, it's likely we could just find other design improvements people have been working on that might do that. There's sort of this other end of the spectrum, and I think Ethereum's the biggest well-known example where my understanding is one of their goals when designing their proof of stake system is sort of like, I mean, the caricature of it is anyone can run a validator on their Raspberry Pi, or that's not precise, but like a caricature. Like the goal is there should be, 1 million validators so that everyone can participate and it's more decentralized is, I think, the motivation. But we believe, like in practice, that isn't actually more decentralized. What happens is you just end up with, so with Ethereum, there's a limit or a fixed size of stake per validator. And so people who want bigger scale and more stake just run more validator processes. And so I actually feel like it's worse for decentralization, because if you want to be a large staker on Ethereum, I'm talking about like running on the metal staker, right? So not like restaking or any of that stuff. You need to have like racks of computers and stuff. So there's a bunch of capital costs that only big players can afford, is sort of the thinking there. And another way to say that is if you just imagine there's no constraints on the protocol, or it's like the perfect protocol or whatever, and there's no limit to how many validators can participate, but there is a limit to how much stake is available because we have the supply cap, then just the way economics and the world works is that is very likely to have a power law distribution. So, yes, there's new updates to Ethereum. I'm a little bit out of date, but I still think using it as an example just to sort of distinguish design space would be helpful. So in either case, in either technical design, I think there's this natural thing where the amount of stake is likely to follow a power law distribution. So there's going to be some participants who have a lot of stake and therefore a lot of influence on the protocol, and then a long tail of small, tiny participants. And I don't think that technical design can change that. But that being said, a lot of people are motivated or curious or want that cap to rise. And I think there's potential for doing that in the future. Another thing to point out is we have a different goal, which is to make the minimum amount of ZEC you need to stake. And here, when I say stake, that is what other networks might call delegating to a validator. For us, our goal is that minimum amount should be very low, hopefully like a ZEC or lower, hopefully even lower, so that even people with very little funds who don't need them active right now and they want to earn a yield can do that. So that's a different kind of decentralization that we value. And then finally, there's this one exception, or there's one sort of edge case where we're designing the protocol so that there is a very long tail of people who can join, like finalizers can show up with teeny amounts to get on to a candidate roster list, but it's only the top 100 slots by weight that will be actively participating in BFT. And the reason that's interesting or important is that that candidate list could be a lot bigger than 100. And why that is important is people can see in the protocol, there's this long tail, and that can be a way for people to coordinate and start building up. Like if you have your community analyzer project or something and you're recruiting supporters, you will still be on that list and people can see you and find you and delegate to you, and you can move up or down in the rank. And so we want to make sure there's a path to getting onto the active list. So that is kind of an exception. But the actual BFT protocol for now is just 100 active finalizers.
Okay, so the next question is Chilled Labs planning on working only with forks of ZebraD, or is a fork of Zakura a potential nightly project? Any compatibility issues? This is something that we actually haven't really discussed. So I think for now, we're probably just going to focus on our fork of Zebra. If it does come up that we want to fork Zakura and implement Crosslink, we'll bring it up in the Crosslink updates group and discuss that there. Yeah, go ahead, Nate.
Oh, one thing is, just in our work so far, we have, we've been aiming for rapid prototyping development. And so we've made, a fair number of changes from upstream Zebra. And this upcoming network reset, where we're going to be backporting Ironwood, is one of our first big cycles of synchronizing and like getting new features from upstream and so forth. So it'll be a great learning opportunity. And then, moving forward, we're probably going to be re-examining how it is implemented and refactoring it significantly. And that might be the kind of time that we think about Zebra or Zakura or other things. We also sometimes discuss or imagine that we, like the amount of changes we have versus Zebra might be substantial, and we might end up just continuing to support like our own node, just as a matter of like development, just because the lines of development are separate. But that being said, we're often chatting with the Zebra folks and like synchronizing on our thinking or our ideas and our plans. The actual porting of the software is more work. So That's why I bring that up.
Okay, next question from USC Miggs. Any thoughts or ideas of how to mitigate saturation of stake by any individual? In the current Crosslink Season 2, if the top staker doesn't participate, we won't be able to meet thresholds since they hold close to more than 30% of the total stake. The way I've seen most chains mitigate this is just by introducing warnings to say that, you know, a certain validator has too much stake, too much voting power, and to redelegate elsewhere to benefit decentralization. Is there anything additional, Nate, that you think we could introduce to help mitigate this issue?
Yeah, it is kind of connected to what I was saying earlier about interventions. So when I was talking about interventions, I was describing a key metric of how active or available the finalizers are. So if that drops too low, that's when you get the BFT stall. A different concern is how much stake the largest finalizers have pointing at them. And that's similar to like mining centralization, you know, where these networks have these power law dynamics. So the biggest players are often much bigger than the long tail of smaller players. One thing that's quite different from mining distribution is it's much easier to rebalance because it's much easier to stake. Like all you need is a mobile wallet instead of any mining hardware. And so it's kind of up to people doing the staking to figure out what to do. And we also are very curious and interested to like enable people to try different things out and to develop different norms and things. One and another thing I want to say is like how concentrated stake is might be a concern to you. How much of the stake is offline might be a different concern, and different people might care about those differently. So one thing we do want to do, I think, is yeah, just to repeat, we're trying to keep the protocol simpler. We're trying to rely more on the stakers to figure out and decide what's important and how to do interventions. And there's definitely a gray area. Like one thing developers can help more with is more dashboards and more visibility and metrics as to what's going on. And we're trying to avoid, I do have like a bit of concern that a lot of times developers might say like, oh yeah, you know, concentrated stake is a problem that we should be aware of. And so let's build tools or dashboards or whatever to address that problem, which makes sense kind of at the first level. But there's this subtle thing that can go on where the developers are then getting more and more prescriptive about how people should behave in the wild. And that can introduce unintended side effects, or maybe the developers don't have different like preferences or beliefs or whatever than the people staking, et cetera, et cetera. So we really want to, we're like, another way to put it is we're having fewer guardrails than other networks build in. And we're hoping people are ready to, you know, bowl without the gutter bumpers as much. Like you gotta pay attention and figure it out and talk with each other. And all that being said, we definitely want to learn. So if people have ideas or suggestions, I would want to hear about that. How does that feel as an answer?
I just wanted to add that there is this effect on the testnet, especially this one, where because there's no general economy or source of capital and things to do, then stake, you end up with basically all of the capital is bound up in staking. which then means there's no capital from anywhere else to guard or counteract such a concentration. And on the current version of the testnet, we have had staking on since basically block 0. And that means that just creates even more concentration. For this next restart of the network we want to do, one of the additions will be the activation mechanism, where at a certain block height, the staking begins, and there are no staking rewards before that. And one of the goals there is that you guys will come onto the new network and form a much more broad distribution of funds before any staking rewards start happening. And that should mitigate this kind of effect a little bit. Then, there's a question of how representative it is for mainnet. Because the mainnet has the big advantage of there's an actual economy and investors and etc. There's like the whole other world. And so recreating that exactly is hard. We can try to get closer to it.
Oh, I did think so, but we are making some design decisions with centralization or decentralization in mind. And one of them is the current incentive design. The intention of the current design of rewards is that if you are staking, so this means you have ZEC, you're putting it into a bond and sort of endorsing a particular finalizer. And the finalizer is the person and the machine that's running the infrastructure. If you are staking, you get a return on your stake, even if you stake to a finalizer that isn't on the top 100 list. So just to say that one more time, as a staker, there's no financial difference for your literal stake between if you pick an active finalizer or not. And the reason for that choice is if you have a network where only the active ones are giving you a return and you're a staker and you don't want to spend a lot of effort figuring out what's going on, what do? You always just look. I mean, I don't do this, but a lot of people might just say, well, whoever's the biggest is probably the best bet, right? Probably the safest, like the too big to fail banks or whatever in the US. If you're going to pick a bank, just pick a big one is probably safe. And that's actually really terrible for concentrating the stake. So this is a design choice where we want to give the new entrants who are trying to get into the list, we want to make sure it can work well for them wherever, without being too prescriptive or getting too specific about the policy. It's just like, hey, let's give the stakers more discretion about where they're pointing that.
Yeah, and in addition to that, if you incentivize people to stake to small finalizers, you create all kinds of perverse incentives where people try to appear as more finalizers than they actually are, etc. So the best we can do is to try to be as neutral as possible and remove any disincentives.
I want to add to that there's one remaining incentive that all the stakers have, which is they all want the price of ZEC to go up. So in the current economic design, you can't make more money by being bigger or smaller or anything else. The only way you can make more money is by causing the network to behave well so that the price of ZEC goes up long term.
Okay, next question is from Breezy. Roughly 3.5% of all voting power currently sits on byte reverse phantom twins of real finalizer keys, including 6 figures of CCAS pointed at the reverse form of the number 1 key. Delegators can recover by retargeting, but the footgun is the raw hex key format itself. Any plans for a checksum encoding Fetch 32 style for finalizer keys before mainnet deeper development. Philip mentioned that we're aware of this and have been making plans for things. Philip, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, we are aware that the current like input system for the finalizers is essentially, you could say, like permissionless, in the sense that there is no there's not really any validation. So we have floated ideas for either at minimum just like checksum systems where there is a hash or like an authentication code of some kind for the well, I should say hash, a checksum for the key, and then we've also floated. We've been considering, without making any hard decisions yet, or at this time, we've had discussions about capability style systems where perhaps finalizers would, since finalizers are associated with public keys, they may also be able to provide a signature. And so, for example, in order to stake to a finalizer, you must also have access to that signature that the finalizer has produced, which at minimum proves that there is a public key, there is a valid public key present there. And if Sam wants to add anything else.
Well, and not only that there is a key, but that key, since we are using key, public key cryptography schemes that are used elsewhere, it's that key has decided it wants to be a finalizer. Otherwise, you could sort of, an organization might have a key pair that is known, and you shouldn't be able to just start delegating to that and create some kind of false idea that they are a finalizer without them having created some kind of provable consent or marker or capability that they in fact have decided to be a finalizer.
Okay, next question from Dismed. When we reset the network, will we create fresh finalizer keys or use the same ones? Will the history of the first feature net be completely forgotten? My understanding is the answer is yes to both of those. Does anybody want to elaborate on either of those points, or is that sufficient?
You probably could reuse some of the keys or the identities unless we change the schemes for how those are generated, which we absolutely may do. So identities might accidentally be portable across the two, but that's not something we promise to enforce. And the history will be reset.
Yeah, we are going to want to point some scrutiny in the future to the quantum computing situation, and making considering our options in terms of quantum safe crypto systems. And so public key, the finalizer identities may or may not be subject to that based on decisions we make moving forward.
Okay, next question is from Ihan. What would be the block reward distribution between proof of work and proof of stake? So right now in our design, we have roughly 20% of block rewards going to the development fund, and then block rewards split between miners and stakers 50-50, so 40%, 40%. This is ultimately for the community to decide. We'll probably put forward a proposal that's, at least as things stand now, we'll probably put together a proposal that's like similar to what is in our current design. But again, it'll be a governance decision that the community and point holders weigh in on.
Can I say a little bit more about it?
Yeah.
I was just answering it in text also. Yeah, that's correct. So the way I think of it is there is the like things like lock boxes or dev funds or any of that kind of use of block issuance in my mind is just outside the system, or I might call that like community governed funds or something. And then the rest is what I consider like automated consensus issuance to the consensus system to be distributed in order to make the infrastructure and protocol work. And so currently that is so that includes new coin issuance and transaction fees currently, and currently both of those just go entirely to the current block miner. So at the top level, what Crosslink does is it splits that bucket. So not the governance stuff, but just the consensus funding 50-50 to proof of work and to proof of stake. But now if we drill into proof of stake, the way that gets distributed is not currently in our implementation, but hopefully for the next workshop when we reset the network. A 10% slice goes to the active finalizers, and it's split up according to the weight, like proportional to the weight those finalizers have. And that might be adjusted by the total weight. I'm not remembering that part directly. And then the remainder, the 90%, is going to staking rewards. And that's the piece I was saying, as a staker using your mobile phone, you just get those rewards no matter which finalizer you're pointing at. And then that is intended to be proportional to how much people are staking. And then there's more and more details because we wanted to allow very small amounts of ZEC to be staked. That means that list of everyone staking, or it's not the people, but every staking position could be very, very large. So then there's like a performance issue, and then there's figuring out how to round things, et cetera. But at the top level, if you zoom into the staking side, if you're trying to do like back of the envelope spreadsheet kinds of predictions, broadly it's so 20% to governance, 40% to the proof of work miner, 40% to stake, and of that there would be 4% going to active finalizers and 36% going to stake rewards.
Okay, thanks for the answer. We are now voting with NU7 for 25-second block times. What are the optimal block times when Crosslink will be activated?
Yes. So for Crosslink, just to be super clear, because sometimes when people are talking about proof of stake, in other proof of stake networks, there's a really desirable feature, which is really fast finality. Crosslink, that's not its goal. It's for now, for version 1. Its goal is to improve safety of the existing Zcash system. And so it is the whole Crosslink system is running proof of work like it currently runs, basically. Like there's miners, they're receiving rewards, that's all normal, and then, or unchanged. And then the finalizers, what they're doing is using this BFT protocol and agreeing on which of those proof of work blocks are final. And there's a little bit of a trailing thing where they can't just say the most recent proof of work block is the final one for like security performance reasons. So what they are doing is saying some number back is final, and I think that might end up being like 10 blocks in production for V1 or something. So the BFT protocol can rapidly arrive at a decision without how do I put this? We can have a really poor performance BFT protocol that's inefficient, and it would still be, no one would notice who's using Crosslink. So we can just take like a standard run-of-the-mill, not amazingly performant BFT system, and it'll come to those conclusions like within seconds, whereas the block time is about 25 seconds. Once those start getting closer together, then we would need to start paying more attention to BFT protocol performance. However, my hope is that like if NU7 targets 25-second proof of work, my hope is that after Crosslink V1 activates, we can activate Crosslink V2 as like, 2-second finality or whatever. But that's very speculative. It's an aspiration. We haven't begun looking at that a lot. But my point is, I wouldn't assume that after Crosslink activates, lowering the proof of work block time will be the best or fastest way to get faster transaction confirmations, because now we have Crosslink. So now we have multiple, we have more flexibility in how to improve the protocol after that. I could put it that way. Yeah. Sorry, there's one piece there. So Crosslink is this hybrid system. There's this one thing, the top level Crosslink widget that's connecting proof of work to proof of stake. In Crosslink V1, the proof of work is as much like the current Zcash proof of work as possible for safety, so that we know we're not changing too much. But once Crosslink is activated, now there's these two different sub protocols, and it's potentially easier or safer to change either one at a time with less risk to the overall system, which is one of the big sort of like secondary motivations for why Crosslink is awesome. We hope we can begin iterating even faster on consensus protocol improvements.
I would also like to just briefly mention that it happens to be the case on the current feature net that the block time actually is 25 seconds, mainly just for expedites development a little bit when we were testing, trying to generate a certain number of blocks. And then also we hope that it increases engagement a little bit by allowing users to submit more blocks more often, and then also get more mining rewards, or get mining rewards more often as well. So that's another reason to just lower the block time.
Okay, another question from USC Miggs. Any potential changes to how the staking windows open and close?
Yes, the question was potential changes. There's one issue we're still resolving that is potentially related, which is about so in the way the high level description of the design is, when you are unstaking, you have to take your staking bond, and then your wallet sends a transaction that moves it into a sort of withdrawing state. We're still working on terminology, but so now it's sitting sort of inert. It is not contributing stake weight, and it's waiting. There's an intentional delay before you can spend those funds. And that intentional delay is to help with cases where slashing could be relevant, or where something sketchy has happened and somebody's used a bunch of stake, and people want to know what it was and think about what to do. All of the stake that may be involved in the system has to wait for a while before it can exit. And so that's before you can reclaim your funds or your original stake amount. So that withdrawal delay, that's the way it's described. But then there's this subtle question of, let's say the withdrawal delay is defined to be some number of staking periods. So the high level description is like, you withdraw and you have to wait, I don't know, like hours or a day or something, TBD. But after you've waited that amount of time, the subtle thing is we also need to make sure that that ending time has become final before you can actually spend those funds. So that's the only tweak that I'm aware of could be related, but there could be other things we run into as we're like digging into that part of the design. But the high level design of you have to initiate a withdrawal and then you have to wait for a staking period, a certain number of staking days is the same.
Next question from Dismat. How does Shielded Labs envision production Crosslink sync behavior in future versions? Do you plan on using snapshots by default or sync from Genesis? How do you guys view the trade-offs? I say this because you guys improved the chain sync plus wallet sync, which is great to see.
The one thing I want to say is I love the syncing improvements because they're an example of where we, like, if you ask me or Zuko earlier on, as we were just ramping up development, I am pretty sure both of us would say like, oh, improving syncing, that's out of scope. You know, that upstream should be doing that. That's a mainnet thing. We don't need to worry about it. But because we're doing the frequent workshops and prototyping and have users, then we quickly discovered that it's actually a major issue. So it's a great example of learning from the real world and then improving syncing. But a lot of the syncing work has been driven by the other engineers. And I'm not sure if they're like, what's the frontier of possible improvements and the appetite, or what do those seem? Sam?
Yes, so I think we can go a lot faster. So I just have an interest in us going a lot faster. But that, the extent to which we work on that is, that's like you can do that after we do the other things that we're actually supposed to be doing.
I also want to just quickly disambiguate. The wallet sync has had some improvements recently, but I just want to flag that the wallet itself is, of course, not a part of the production Crosslink system. It is Shielded Labs node software that we, have provided to participants to make it easier for them to participate. So that is independent, and when or whether we add like persistence and other features is a separate track from ChainSync.
Yeah, actually, that's a useful segue because we have been talking about, like right now, we sort of have this one software bundle that does everything, which is great for workshops and demos and making sure the whole system is working. But probably as we approach production, we would want to break out a few different products. So Finalizer software that's just for Finalizer operators, versus a wallet that can stake, versus the visualizer as a like diagnostic tool. And where does that live? Is it, one thing we've discussed that I kind of like, but as challenges is like you can attach your visualizer to a running headless thing. But we haven't really started unbundling those yet. And I kind of assume, like we were just having early conversations about it, I assume for the next workshop, we'll be sticking with the one monolithic thing so that we can just focus on the new network consensus rollout instead of trying to do two things at once. But we do want to begin unbundling, and it was very helpful to be hearing from a lot of people who want more headless features to help us recognize like, oh yeah, some people also just want headless this or that. So it's another example of learning from all of you participating. So good work. Good job. Thanks.
Yeah, we're hoping to put in the engineering legwork to allow headless users to have a better experience with respect to the binaries, because currently the binaries are GUI only, and we're hoping in future to allow participants to download one binary, and if they want UI, they get UI. If they want headless, they can be headless without building from source.
Okay, looks like that's it for the questions. Thanks to everyone for showing, for attending. Really appreciate it. Okay, so our next workshop is probably going to be late September, early October, and during it, we will introduce the new network and walk you guys through how to participate. If you have any questions, let us know in the Crosslink updates group on Signal or ping us on the forum. And yeah, we'll see you all next time. Thanks for coming out. Bye all.